911, what's your emergency?
Mommy, she won't wake up.
Honey, where are you?
Maggie, my name is Maggie. We're at home.
Stay on the line, Maggie. Help is coming.
The main floor of the station buzzed with the usual controlled chaos. Phones rang, officers hurried in and out, and the air crackled with the undercurrent of urgency that came with the job.
Officer Nancy Harris, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, barely looked up from her paperwork as the call came through.
She had barely finished jotting down the address when a feeling, a prickle of unease, washed over her. It wasn't the first time she'd responded to a disconnected 911 call, but something about the child's voice, the raw terror that bled through the line, resonated deep within her.
Nancy grabbed her jacket, the weight of her service weapon familiar against her hip. She headed out, her mind already racing.
The address was in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, not known for trouble. Yet, the fear in that little voice echoed in Nancy's ears. It was a fear that transcended socio-economic boundaries, a fear that spoke of a vulnerability no child should ever have to face.
Nancy stepped on the gas, the siren a wail of urgency cutting through the afternoon calm.
The house was a picture of suburban normalcy. A neatly mowed lawn, a swing set swaying gently in the breeze, a bright yellow toy truck abandoned on the driveway. The normalcy was unnerving, at odds with the frantic heartbeat drumming in Nancy's ears.
She approached cautiously, her hand hovering over her holster. The front door was ajar. "Hello, Maggie? It's Officer Nancy. I'm here to help."
Silence. Nancy stepped inside, her eyes scanning the living room. Toys were scattered on the floor. A half-eaten bowl of cereal sat on the coffee table, signs of a normal day abruptly cut short. The air was heavy, thick with an unsettling stillness. Following the sound of stifled sobs, Nancy made her way down the hallway. Each closed door seemed to amplify the pounding in her chest. She found Maggie huddled in the corner of a bedroom, her small frame shaking with silent tears. The sight of the child, so young and so alone, sent a wave of protectiveness washing over Nancy.
"Maggie?"
Nancy knelt down, her voice soft, non-threatening. The child looked up, her eyes wide and red-rimmed.
Mommy, she's still sleeping.
Maggie pointed to the figure lying on the bed. The woman lay unnaturally still, her face pale, her chest unmoving. Nancy's heart sank. She had known from the moment she'd heard the fear in Maggie's voice that something was terribly wrong. But nothing, not years on the force, not the countless tragedies she'd witnessed, could have prepared her for the sight of that lifeless figure, the embodiment of a child's worst nightmare.
Careful not to alarm Maggie, Nancy checked for a pulse. It was a formality, a confirmation of what she already knew. There was no pulse, no breath, no sign of life. The woman was gone. Nancy's mind raced. She had a job to do, protocols to follow, but all she could see was Maggie, her small face etched with a grief she was too young to comprehend. How do you explain death to a child, especially when it's the one person who was their entire world?
Gently, Nancy coaxed Maggie away from the room, leading her to the living room. She settled the child on the sofa, wrapping her in a soft blanket. Maggie clung to her, her small arms tight around Nancy's neck.
"Where's Daddy?"
The question hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the cruel hand life had dealt this little girl.
Daddy went away a long time ago. Mommy said he went to live with the stars.
Nancy's heart ached. She knew then that Maggie was alone. No family, no one to hold her, no one to tell her that it would be okay.
The following hours passed in a blur. Paramedics arrived, the coroner, social workers.
Nancy stayed by Maggie's side, a silent protector in the chaos. She answered the child's questions with gentle honesty, shielding her from the harshest realities.
As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room floor, a social worker approached Nancy.
"We'll take her to the station," she said, her voice kind but weary. "She'll stay there until we can find a placement for her."
Nancy felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce refusal to let this child face another moment of uncertainty alone.
"No," she said, her voice firm. "She'll come home with me."
The social worker hesitated, then nodded. She had seen the bond forming between the officer and the child, a silent understanding that transcended words. Leaving the house that held so much sadness, Nancy held Maggie's small hand in hers.
"It's going to be okay, Maggie," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise."
The next few days were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and home visits. Maggie, quiet and observant, settled into Nancy's home with a resilience that belied her young age. She played with Nancy's dog, ate ice cream for dinner, and slept soundly in the guest room, surrounded by stuffed animals.
Nancy found herself drawn to Maggie's quiet strength, her infectious laugh, her ability to find joy in the smallest things. The emptiness that had lingered in Nancy's heart, a void left by the painful realization that she and her husband, Mark, couldn't have children of their own, began to fill with a love she had never thought possible. The thought of adoption, once a distant dream, now took root in her mind, a seed of hope nurtured by Maggie's presence.
She shared her feelings with Mark, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and longing. Mark, ever the supportive husband, listened patiently. He too had grown attached to Maggie, his heart touched by her vulnerability and her quiet courage. The decision, they both knew, wouldn't be easy.
The legal process was arduous, a maze of paperwork, interviews, and background checks. Doubts crept in, whispers of what-ifs and are we doing the right thing? But through it all, the image of Maggie's trusting eyes, the feel of her small hand slipping into hers, fueled Nancy's resolve. Finally, after months of uncertainty, the day arrived. The courtroom, usually a place of formality and distance, felt warm and welcoming.
Maggie, dressed in a new dress and shoes, sat on, her eyes wide with anticipation. The judge, a kind-faced woman with a gentle smile, made it official. Maggie was theirs, their daughter in every way that mattered.
As Nancy and Mark signed the papers, tears of joy streamed down their faces. They were a family.
Life with Maggie was everything Nancy and Mark had ever dreamed of. Their home, once quiet and orderly, was now filled with the sounds of laughter, the pitter-patter of little feet, and the sweet chaos that came with raising a child. Maggie blossomed under their love and care, her laughter becoming more frequent, her smiles brighter. Then, just when their lives seemed complete, fate intervened in the most unexpected way. Nancy was pregnant.
The news came as a shock, a joyous miracle that left them speechless. As Nancy cradled her growing belly, she couldn't help but think that Maggie, their little miracle, had somehow paved the way, opening their hearts and their lives to a happiness they had never thought possible. The future stretched before them, full of promise and hope. They were a family, bound by love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond forged on that fateful day when a little girl named Maggie made a desperate call for help.